بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرج.
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. اللهم كل وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها حبيبا. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to have our webinar this week celebrating Milad of Imam Mahdi Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. Last year, actually, we had this session from here in the same retreat in Oxfordshire in the UK. And I talked about global mission of Imam Mahdi Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, as you remember. And Alhamdulillah, discussion went well. So we had 2 more sessions. So we had 3 sessions on this topic. And Alhamdulillah, we managed to publish it as a small book, Global Mission of Imam Mahdi. Now, I want to share with you something that inshallah is coming soon, but unfortunately this one has taken long. So in 2021, 22, when I went to Qom and visited some institutions, especially the one that is the Center for Studies on Imam Mahdi. We call it Markaz Takhassusiyya Mahdawiyya. They specialize in Imam Mahdi. So I found a book. They gifted me with several books, but one of them was a pocket-sized book in Farsi, Imam Mahdi in Shia and Sunni Hadith. I very much like this book, and therefore decided to translate it quickly and make it available for people who don't know Farsi. If you remember, we had also a series on Imam Mahdi in Islamic scholarship. Part of it was about Imam Mahdi in Sunni and Shia Hadith. I referred to this book then also. And inshallah, I hope with your du'as we can publish that because the first volume of that book is ready. It needs my revision. And unfortunately, sometimes revisions take time. So pray inshallah for me. So this one, translation was finished soon. But then we wanted to check all the references again. And there were, places that we need to add some points. So it took several years, and also finally it was thoroughly checked by one of our brothers who is very much into this Mahdavi studies. So inshallah, with your du'as, the book is going to come in the next few weeks. I did try to make it available for Milad of Imam Mahdi, but I was not successful. But now I want to share with you this book in the form of maybe 2 or 3 sessions. And inshallah, then you will have the book. And inshallah, we will need to then make this book available to our communities and distribute. It will be a small book, but I think something that every Shia must read and must have available to share with our brothers and sisters. So I show you the table of contents. So there is a foreword, there's an introduction. Foreword is my foreword. I have explained what we have done in the process of preparing this book. It's not just translation. Then there is introduction. There is chapter 1, Hadith references about Imam Mahdi, Shia references, and then Sunni references. And when it comes to Shia references, we divide into two parts. References to Imam Mahdi before the birth of Imam Mahdi, very early references, and references after the birth of Imam Mahdi. So you see, the Shia were consistent. They were talking about Imam Mahdi before his birth and after his birth. It's not that, as some people think, this idea came, after a few centuries, etc. And when it comes to references after the birth of Imam Mahdi, we divide into two parts. Those books which have addressed the topic of Imam Mahdi as well as other topics. So the books dealt with this topic and other topics. And then we refer to the books which were only dealing with Imam Mahdi, so exclusive to Imam Mahdi. Okay, so this is the first part of chapter 1. Then, when it comes to Sunni references, we will divide it into 4. References before the birth of Imam Mahdi. We have several Sunni references to Imam Mahdi, even before the time that we believe Imam was born. References after the birth of Imam Mahdi till end of the minor occultation. References in the age of major occultation. And in particular, we want to refer to the books which are exclusive to Imam Mahdi, compiled by Sunni scholars. Then in chapter 2, general perspective on the hadith about Imam Mahdi. So, what topics are there about Imam Mahdi? Then, number of hadith of infallibles, Rasulullah and Imams about Imam Mahdi. Then, hadith from ashab, from companions of the Prophet about Imam Mahdi, and conclusion. Then, another thing that we discuss about characteristics of this hadith is that hadith about Imam Mahdi are mutawatir, meaning they are so frequently mentioned in every generation of the narrators that leave no chance for any doubt. Plus, we will talk about validity of those hadiths. Of course, when we say mutawatir, it doesn't necessarily mean that the wording is mutawatir. It means the idea, tawatur ma'nawi. And also, if you look at them separately, also, there are lots of valid hadiths, authentic hadiths. Chapter 3, we added, you are familiar with this because this is what we discussed in the book Imam and Walaya, that there are lots of hadiths that talk about imama in general and the fact that in every generation there must be imam. So even if they don't speak about Imam Mahdi in particular, they say there must be imam in every time. So who is imam now? So this is one chapter. Then we will talk about hadiths that are about Imam Mahdi in particular. So there are shared topics between Sunni and Shia, and there are specific topics. What are shared are as follows. The idea of Al-Mahdi in principle. This is very much common. Necessity of belief in Al-Mahdi is common. Sunni Shia. Universality of the call and governance of Al-Mahdi. This is common. Descent of Jesus and following Imam Mahdi in prayer, in Salat, is common. Sunni Shia have reported this. Hasful Baida, which is one of the signs of coming of Imam Mahdi, which we discussed. You remember we had a series on signs. That is common. Sunni Shia have said this. Consensus about the title of Al-Mahdi. There is consensus. Divine support. Common. Sunni Shia have hadith that Imam Mahdi will be supported by Allah. The sun rising from the west. Sunni and Shia have hadith that at that time the sun, instead of rising from the east, will rise from the west. Al-Mahdi is a descent of Lady Fatima. Sunni Shia have reported this. Some of the physical characteristics of Imam Mahdi, Sunni and Shia have reported. The abundance of divine bounties, ni'mah, in the time of Imam Mahdi. There are Sunni and Shia hadith about it. Allegiance between Rukn and Maqam, next to Kaaba, people will pay allegiance to Imam Mahdi between Rukn and Maqam. Sunni and Shia have this. Inclusive justice, universal justice. Having the same name as the Prophet. So these are common issues that you find in Sunni hadith. What is not common? One is about the birth of Imam Mahdi. Was he born or not? About genealogy of Imam Mahdi, also there is a discussion, although they all say that he is from Lady Fatima, he's from the Prophet, etc. But there is a discussion in some Sunni hadith, they say he's from Imam Hassan progeny. We'll talk about it. Then chapter 5 deals with some questions or objections and replies to them. For example, some people say, why in Sahihain, in Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, there is no hadith on Imam Mahdi? We will evaluate this claim. Also, some people say, why Ibn Khaldun questions the idea of Al-Mahdi and hadith on Al-Mahdi? We will talk about it. So then there is bibliography. This is a summary of this small book. And inshallah, the book will be about like 140 pages. So let us start with the first chapter, which is hadith references about Imam Mahdi. As I said, we start with the Shia references. So references that were compiled before the birth of Imam Mahdi. This by itself is like a mu'jiza that several generations before they were informed about coming of Imam Mahdi and his birth. You know, imagine you mentioned the name of all the 12 Imams, and if they were, you know, for example, killed and didn't have any children, this could, you know, stop. It was very risky to say something because enemies, you know, could try hard to stop this. It's a mu'jiza. No one could stop it. So the first book we mention here is Kitabu Sulaym ibn Qais, which is also known as Asraru Al Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by Abu Ishaq Sulaym ibn Qais al-Hilali al-Amiri al-Kufi, who died in 76 after Hijrah. He was very early. The late Sheikh Agha Buzurg Tehrani, in his book Az-Zariya ila Tasanif al-Shi'a, has a good discussion about this book. If you are interested, you can study there about this book. Al-Ghaybah lil-Hujjah by Al-Abbas ibn Hisham Abu al-Fadl al-Nashiri, who died in 222 after Hijrah. 35 years before Imam Mahdi was born, he died, and he compiled the book before his death. The third, أخبار المهدي by Abu Sa'id عباد ibn Ya'qub الرجاني الكوفي. Sorry, الروادني الكوفي. الروادني الكوفي, who died in 250 or 271. If he died in 250 before the birth of Imam, he was born. Sorry, he passed away. If Imam was born, he passed away. If it was 271, so part of his life was after the birth, but the book was written before. The next person, Al-Qa'im As-Saghir by Hassan ibn Ali ibn Abi Hamza al-Bata'ini. He was living during the time of Imam Kazim alayhi salam. We don't know the exact year of his death, but he was several generations before. The next, Al-Ghaiba by Abu Ishaq Ibrahim ibn Salih Al-Anmati. He used to live during the life of Imam Kazim or Imam Reza, one of the two, or maybe a little here, a little there, again several generations before. So these are some of the books. We don't claim these are the only books, but these are some of the books that were compiled. They refer to Imam Mahdi, and they were earlier than the birth, than Ghaiba. Then we mention references after the birth of Imam Mahdi. Some of these books are exclusive to this topic. Some of them are covering other topics as well. So those books which have addressed the topic of Imam Mahdi as well as other topics, for example, Al-Mahasin, very famous book by, they normally call it Mahasin Barghi. Al-Mahasin by Abu Ja'far Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Khalid ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Muhammad ibn Ali al-Barghi. So some people say this book is so important that it's like Kutub Arba'in. It's like the four major collections of Hadith, Kafi, Tahzib, Istibsar, Man La Yahdud. It's so important. This book was very detailed and long, but unfortunately only some of it has reached us. In the part that is available to us, we have it today, there are 13 hadiths on Imam Mahdi. And he's very close because he died in 274 or 280. So, very close. The second is Basair al-Darajat by Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Hassan ibn Farrukh al-Saffar. Died 290 after Hijrah in Ghaibat al-Suqra. He was one of the companions of Imam Hassan al-Askari. He was a student of Ahmad Barghi, the previous one, and a teacher of Shaykh Kulayni. This book, Basair al-Darajat, is written about the merits of Ahlul Bayt and is one of the most valid early collections of hadith by great Shia personalities. It has at least 30 hadiths on Imam Mahdi. Maybe some other hadiths are related, but at least we can say 30 hadiths are directly about Imam Mahdi. Qurbul Isnad, very famous book by Abu Abbas Abdullah ibn Ja'far ibn Husayn ibn Malik Jami' al-Himyari, ibn Jami' al-Himyari. He was a teacher of Shaykh Kulayni. He had correspondence with Imam Hadi and Imam Askari. And through Muhammad ibn Uthman al-Amri, the Naib of Imam Mahdi. He had correspondence with Imam Mahdi. This book is one of the 400 principles. You know, there were Usul Arba'miyah that were used by Sheikh Khulaini and others to compile, collections of hadith. So this is one of those 400 sources that the Shia had before compilation of Kutub Arba'in. Unfortunately, many of them are not available today. Some of them only are available, but we have them through other books. So, this book contains at least 13 hadiths about Imam Mahdi. Then Al-Kafi, you know Al-Kafi by Sheikh Khulaini, Muhammad ibn Ya'qub ibn Ishaq al-Khulaini al-Razi from the city of Ray, who died 329, exactly when Ghaybat al-Sughra finished. This book is one of the oldest and most valid sources of Shia hadith, and among its well-known commentaries, one may refer to Mir'at al-Uqul by the late Allama Muhammad Baqir al-Maqdisi, and also Al-Wafi by late Mullah Muhsin Fayd al-Kashani. Al-Kafi by itself has more than 16,000 hadiths, mashallah. There are 188 hadiths about Imam Mahdi in Al-Kafi. So how can someone say this idea was not known to the Shia, and only after several centuries, this idea emerged? The next, Kifayatul Athar fi an-Nass ala a'immat al-Ithnay Ashar by Abu al-Qasim Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Ali al-Khazaz al-Qummi al-Razi. He was one of the outstanding Shia narrators and jurists of the second half of the 4th century. I don't know the exact date of his death, but you know that it is in the second half of the 4th century. He was born in the city of Qom, but was student of Sheikh al-Saduq. The next, Al-Irshad fi Ma'rifati Hujajillah ala al-Ibad, the famous book, Al-Irshad by Sheikh al-Mufid. You know Sheikh al-Mufid, who died in 413 after Hijrah. He was a teacher of Sheikh Tusi, Sayyid Murtada, and Sayyid Radi. This book is about the history and merits of infallible Imams. It has about 90 hadiths on Imam Mahdi. Then some books which were exclusively written on Imam Mahdi. The books I mentioned now, they covered Imam Mahdi as a topic, and they covered other topics. Number one, Al-Ghaybah by Nu'mani, known as Ghaybah Nu'mani. Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ibrahim ibn Ja'far Al-Khatib Al-Nu'mani. He was known as Abu Zainab, one of the great Shia narrators of the beginning of the 4th century. He died in 360 after Hijrah. The book itself was compiled in 342, only 3 years after Ghaybat al-Sughra finished, in Aleppo. It's exclusive to the topic of Al-Mahdi. It has 478 hadiths, and 300 hadiths are directly related to Imam Mahdi. Ajjalallahu ta'ala. Then Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Ni'mah by Sheikh al-Saduq, who died in 381. He was born because of a prayer of Imam Mahdi and compiled this book at command of Imam Mahdi. I have mentioned in the footnote out of references and the story about this. Sheikh Saduq himself explains that how this idea was coming to him. So it is considered one of the earliest hadith references about this topic. There are 658 hadiths in this book. Out of them, 370 are directly related to Imam. Al-Fusul al-Ashara fil-Ghayba by Sheikh al-Mufid again, who died in 413. The main topic of this book is to reply to some of the most important questions and objections about the existence of Imam Mahdi, which was raised in the time of Sheikh al-Mufid. The other names of this book are Al-Ajwabah and Al-Masail al-Ashara, or Al-Masail al-Ashara fil-Ghayba. 4. Arba' Risalat fil-Ghayba, again by Sheikh al-Mufid. This is in a question and answer format and has discussions about Ghayba and about uprising, Qiyam of Imam Mahdi, and there are questions that he addresses. 5. Kitabul Ghayba lil-Hujjah by Sheikh Tusi Rizwanullah Ta'ala alayh. Sheikh al-Ta'ifah. We cannot explain how great was this Sheikh in his knowledge and services. He's like master of Shia in his time, and for several generations he was dominant, his ideas and thoughts. This is one of the best, most important, and most complete Shia references about Ghayba of Imam Mahdi. It has intellectual and transmitted arguments for the Dalil Aqli, Dalil Shar'i, Naqli, for the existence of Imam Mahdi, his occultation, his advent, some of the signs of his advent, his merits, and his conduct. This is very important because it was compiled in Baghdad. Can you guess what is the significance of Baghdad? Baghdad is very important because there were some of the great libraries there, and also some of the Nawab of Imam Mahdi had lived there. So it was very good place to have access to references. The author had benefited from 2 major and great Shia libraries and had access to many of those usul arba'mi'ah, those 400 principles that are the beginning of our collections of hadith, that Kutub Arba'ah are based on them. So it has 500 hadiths. Out of them, 270 hadiths are closely connected with Imam Mahdi. Mu'jamu ahadith Imam al-Mahdi. There are many books, but the reason I am saying this, because this is a very great recent work. So a group of researchers tried to collect all the hadith about Imam Mahdi from Sunni and Shia sources. It was initially in 5 volumes, then was made into 8 volumes. The new edition has 8 volumes. And the hadiths are organized according to the infallible from whom the hadith was received, starting from the Prophet up to the last infallible. There are 1,000 861 hadiths in this work. So there are many other books. I just here mentioned some of them that were selected by the authors of the book. And then we have references that are compiled by Sunnis, even from before the birth of Imam Mahdi. I will leave it for the next session, but just to give you a kind of sample. For example, we have a book, Al-Jami' by Ma'mar ibn Rashid al-Azdi, who died in 153. It is printed with Al-Musannaf by Ibn San'an. So this book was written decades before the birth of Imam Mahdi and has hadith about Al-Mahdi. Or Al-Risala by Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i, very famous, who died in 204, again before the birth of Imam. Or Al-Musannaf, the same Al-Musannaf you mentioned, by San'ani, who died 211, have hadith about Imam Mahdi. And there are more that inshallah we will talk in the next session. So, before we inshallah refer to these hadiths, the topics which are covered, etc., I hope this makes it clear that this idea of Al-Mahdi in Akhir al-Zaman, who will fill the earth with justice, etc., progeny of the Prophet, is very well established idea from the very beginning, even from the life of the Prophet. This idea was established. And I believe, and I think it's easy to document, that to believe in Imam Mahdi is easier than believing in Imam of Amir al-Mu'minin, because that is, maybe some people don't understand or have other interpretations. But no one who has a little knowledge would doubt Al-Mahdi. Yes, they may have differences about whether he's born or not, but about the idea of Al-Mahdi, that a progeny of the Prophet, a progeny of Lady Fatima, will establish the earth with justice. And as I said, there are many common topics. Jesus will come. He will be supported by God. The blessings of Allah will be abundant, etc. This is agreed by all Muslims, Sunni, Shia. So this is not a Shia idea. It's a Sunni as well idea. It's Islamic idea. So we thank Allah that, alhamdulillah, we have all these references available. All of them are now put together in the Mojam and in some other books. Even some of the books have now printed the picture of these Sunni books. So all the pictures are there, not just the typed, text, the pictures of the books that they have published. And our Sunni brothers are very strong in the belief in Al-Mahdi. Inshallah, we'll talk about this. We thank Allah that, alhamdulillah, this is very well documented. We thank the people who have compiled these books. And I hope, inshallah, we can then do our part in, inshallah, educating ourselves and helping others to know more about Imam. Thank you very much for your attention. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.